Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions. My name is Michelle Hawk. I am so happy to be here today with my shaman sister, Katherine Bird, and Dr. Melissa Bird, special guest. You get a whole flock of us here today with you. We are tuning in episode 140, Intuitive Leadership and the Graceful Revolution. We're going to talk about how intuitive leadership builds community, what this whole idea of the graceful revolution is, and how we can participate in that. Dr. Melissa Bird is a fighter, a mother, a small business owner, and a proud descendant of the Shivwits band of Paiutes. And she is running for Congress in Oregon's 4th district to dig up what's broken and build something bold in its place. Melissa, thank you so much for being here with us. It's really wonderful to welcome you to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We met almost a year ago, I think, or at the last fall, last winter, and you and Katherine have also met as well when you were traveling out to Santa Fe. So we've been in connection for a while and building some really wonderful conversations. I was a guest on Melissa's podcast, and I'm really, really happy to welcome you here to talk about intuitive leadership, the graceful revolution, and of course how you're running for Congress. So I'd love to hear what are you inspired about right now? What is the emergent thing that you're wanting to share with us right in this moment?
So many things.
I left that very open-ended. Let's start with, what is the graceful revolution?
Oh my gosh. So the graceful revolution is actually something that came to me in a dream. So in 2014, I basically, in the middle of the night, rolled over and typed this note on my phone. I don't remember doing it. And then when I woke up, my phone was open to the notes app. And I read it, and it talked about how the graceful revolution is a movement to really get involved in the things that light us on fire and make us feel inspired and divinely connected to the things that we are hopeful about. And so basically the note said, I believe in a new brand of advocacy where we humble ourselves to our shortcomings and engage in acts of graceful revolution that bring light to the true reality of people's lives. And I went on to write about how when we engage people in their own spaces and teach them to look at injustices as moments that touch themselves, then we give people the knowledge of the power structure and the tools to infiltrate its membrane. And I think this idea, especially about the tools to infiltrate its membrane, was something that really resonated with me, because I keep thinking about these spaces of power and how we can be called to lead into those spaces of power. And so the graceful revolution has led me on this path since I wrote it down. And I was very excited about it. I remember hitting my husband awake and being like, oh my God, you're never going to believe what I wrote in the middle of the night. It was so amazing. And it just has been something that has built this foundation of leadership for me. We're really thinking about how do we talk about the moments in our lives that actually impact everybody, because we are intricately woven with each other. And it's really it's become this foundation upon which I operate, where really thinking about revolutionary acts, not just about protest and fighting, and those things are important. Like, they are a very important critical piece to our democracy. And also sometimes the most revolutionary acts are the acts that happen within us, that are quieter, that really transform and transfigure the way we operate in the world. And so it's just become this movement from which I've operated and taught about and spoken about with people. So.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we think of revolution or protest or whatever this is, and we have a very rigid idea of what that looks like. And I love this idea of that the revolution must begin at home, and meaning inside of us, the internal revolution must occur in order for us to be in right action out in the world, that we must confront ourselves and our programming and our beliefs and our wounds and like what we're doing with our day-to-day existence and how we're, are we willing to take hold of our lives? Are we willing to cultivate joy even in hardship and confusion? And are we willing to take risks with our life and do things that we aren't good at? There's so many places that are really these revolutionary things that occur for us internally. I'm curious for you, where have you found that for yourself, like your own internal revolution that you've needed to go through in order to get to a place where you're willing, like running for office is a big deal. It's like, okay, like you're doing it. You're doing something that we all are like, oh gosh, if only I had that much guts in my stomach, I would get it together. But like you're really doing this, and I imagine there's a lot of internal work and internal revolution that's had to occur for you in order to get to this place. Can you open up a little bit about something that you've had to move through in order to get here?
Yeah, I think giving ourselves grace and 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 really connecting to the energetic flow of the divine has been really critical for me. So, giving myself a break for being human, and recognizing my humanity has been one of the most revolutionary acts that I have engaged in, particularly, I think, in the last, 10 or 15 years, just allowing myself to be like really. I actually got this really strong message yesterday from several people to just enjoy the ride, because yes, running for office it's a ride, y'all. You don't even know. Like, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? But at the same time, I'm being called in this direction. Like, this is a place that I have been pushed towards, because now is the time. I was actually just talking to someone about how I was born for this moment. I have been engaging in policy advocacy my entire career. I have been, um, really engaged in the action of policy making and advocacy throughout all of my work. And the thing that I think is so important, especially as we're navigating these just incredibly deeply chaotic times, is to remember that this is an evolutionary process that has happened thousands of years over time. And really being able to like take a couple of deep breaths even, and just breathe so deeply in through my nose and just feel my body and become fully embodied to where I am at the present moment has been really quite revolutionary. I think if all of us could take the time to just breathe into ourselves and feel our muscles and our bones and our skin, and recognize how deeply woven together we are as people. And I talk a lot about how we are naturally occurring things on this planet, and we've been trained to believe that we are separate and above nature just by society and colonization and all of these things that have taken place over the last, you know several hundred years. But when we really recognize that weaving together and that connectedness, and we start to lead from those spaces, then people really resonate with us, because they go, oh, you know I can actually do something. And not everybody is going to run for office, and nor do I recommend everybody run for office. But I do think when we look at ourselves as communal beings and we look at our communities, we do start to figure out that we have a voice and we can speak out for the things that we feel very passionate and deeply about. And there is something about taking that risk to be vulnerable and open and speak out those words from a space of grace and love that completely transforms how we define radical, how we define revolution. And I think that's what we're being led towards as I'm looking at what's happening in our country right now, what's happening in our, our cities and our states and our communities, we are being called to having a very radical conversation about how we are deeply connected to each other. And that is something, the idea of giving myself grace and space for just being a person has really transformed how I engage in the world. And especially as I'm running for office, I am very well suited to holding a congressional seat. I've been doing policy for most of my life. I understand how policies impact regular human beings. What's happening at the federal level is deeply impacting our families, our businesses, our communities. And I just think that I'm running up against that established idea that we've bought into this idea of the professional politician, that those are the people with the answers and those are the people with the expertise. When actually, I think for so many of us, our lives have given us the expertise to be able to engage in this way. And it's not for everybody, but it is a place that I'm being called towards. And I think that when we give ourselves grace, it just changes the trajectory of our lives, no matter what it is we're doing.
Mm, I love that. I have this image coming to mind as you're talking about all of these things where it's like if you have a boulder and you could break apart the boulder by taking a jackhammer to it, or you could just let the moss do its thing. And it might take a while, but there's this the moss and the moisture and it's a relational way of transformation because the moss isn't just imposing force on the boulder, it's being in relationship and living with the boulder to as an organic unfolding of its most thriving beingness, it does end up breaking down the boulder. Mm-hmm. And so there's almost this like, how do we and to hear you talk about how you are so uniquely perfectly positioned to be stepping into Congress and to holding a congressional seat because of your not only your background in policy, but also your deep connection to your community. And you are far more connected, I think, than the majority of people in public office to the needs and the ordinary lives of the majority of people. And so there is this relationality in what I hear you talking about that doesn't look like a jackhammer coming in. It's not some outside force. It's not some like hard pointed thing. It's an organic, alive, relational component that still creates transformation and revolution. That's what I'm seeing and hearing and what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think that also really remembering that, like, when we as human beings really are given a message, like when we hear that whisper in our ear, sometimes it's a screaming, yelling metal band, and sometimes it's a really delicate little whisper. But like when we hear that message, when we take steps towards it, everything transforms, everything changes. And I think that when we take the risk to listen to where we're being called towards, then people come along. Like, people are inspired by that. And that is what we are craving right now, is that inspiration for not just for ourselves, but for the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to hear you talk a little bit.
Go ahead.
I'd love to hear. I feel like we're kind of edging in on intuitive leadership as you're talking about the metal band of the messaging, but also the being in this attunement and being in this collaborative relationship. And of course, the majority of people who are tuning into this podcast are spiritual seekers, practitioners, mystics, healer, helper, attuned to the mysteries folks. So we're speaking that language here. Of course, not only in personal spiritual practice, but also translating that into an entrepreneurial or professional practice, or even if people are not in a spiritual profession, it still, of course, emanates into the work that people are doing in the world because they're anchored in spirit, they're anchored in nature-based connection, however that unfolds for them. So I'd love to hear, let's explore intuitive leadership a little bit, because I'm so like I hear this, and I know you, and I'm just like, oh, the idea of you being in Congress and you having being in this position as you is just so very exciting to me. And so I know that, of course, the majority of people listening to this are not going to be holding public office, but still, like, how we're engaging with this in whatever way we are, I think is part of this, this very meaningful transformation of how people are creating revolution in all of the ways that we are in
Yeah.
society.
Yeah. And so intuitive leadership is something that I've been talking about it for a couple of years, because what I started to notice is, especially after COVID, the world kind of opened up again after COVID, is that we started to become terrified of the unknown, right? Because the unknown could literally make us sick and potentially cause us to lose our lives. And what I started to notice is that people were having a really hard time navigating the grays of life. Life is not actually all or nothing, either or, black or white. Life is actually about the both and the, the living in the grays and navigating the unknown with intention. And so I started to think about, if we were leading, and leadership comes in all forms. It's not just people in power. We lead in our families, we lead in our communities, we lead with our friends. Like, there's many different ways that we lead, and when we lead from this space of intuition, when we listen to that voice inside of us, when we hear the messages that we are receiving, what happens is that we're following that divine path, and we're not running up against a system that keeps trying to block us. And that helps us be more comfortable with the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I can look at my calendar and know the appointments that I have, but I don't know how those things are going to unfold. And a couple of years ago, I started engaging in a practice where I would wake up in the morning, and right as I was just coming into my body, before I would even get up to start my day, I would think to myself, I wonder what's going to happen today. And that immediately put me in this space of curiosity and wondering how my day is going to play out. Like, what's going to happen when I go back to bed and I'm laying in bed and I reflect back on my day? Am I going to reflect back on it in wonder? Or am I going to reflect back on it thinking, oh my God, there's 322,000 things I quote unquote should have done, right? The shoulds come up, and then, that puts us into a spiral. But when we're leading from a space and operating from a space of intuition, what ends up happening is that we're in this space of curiosity and wonder. And then we are collectively tapping into the abundance of what this life has to offer us. And when we lead from that space of intuition and listen to, the voice inside of us, and really go in that direction, then we are authentically engaging with the world and with the planet. And it's funny, because I was just Metallica is my favorite band of all time ever. I used to joke that I meditate to Metallica. So a lot of people are like, "What the hell, Missy?" And I'm like, "No, really." Like, that's where I go into my zone. And I think, and that is the authentic version of who I am. When I try and ignore that piece of who I am, I don't feel good. My body doesn't feel good. My heart doesn't feel good. My soul doesn't feel good. And I think that the more we allow ourselves to listen to our compulsions, where we're being called towards, it keeps us in alignment with our purpose and our spirits, and it helps align. I talk a lot about having 4 bodies. We've got our physical body, our mental body, our emotional body, and our spiritual body. And when we allow ourselves to ask those different parts of ourselves what we need, what we want, what we're craving, who we are, and we allow ourselves to release the external messages that we've gotten and just kind of let them out into the world, so that we can really understand who we are at this place in time. Like who I am on Thursday, October 14th is not even who I was yesterday. And who I am as a 50-year-old woman is not who I was when I was 25. And thank God, but also she was awesome too. But I really wonder what would happen to us collectively as a collective if we started listening to our intuitive sense and we started taking action and doing things from that space of just our internal compass and our internal knowing. And I think for so many people, they've turned that off. Like they've shut off that internal compass. They don't know how to even connect with who they are on the inside. And I do believe, and I've taught this, I teach a class called Rebel School, and I teach this a lot in Rebel School. Like it starts with the breath. And then every action we take after we've breathed deeply into our bodies opens up our senses and opens up our capacity to listen to our intuition.
It's beautiful, Melissa. I was reflecting the other day. I was thinking, somebody asked me on this path, what are like key, like most important things maybe that you ever like figured out? And I think one of them was how to take a breath, like how to actually breathe into my stomach, like how to stop like holding all this like tightness and tension in my stomach and actually let it just be open and let all the breath come all the way down into my body and to feel it fully and to watch that happen. And that is such a simple thing when okay, yeah, you can breathe into your stomach, but I think it probably has been one of the number one things that has helped me like feel regulated, feel home in my body, be able to tap into this intuitive understanding and awareness, be able to come from a place of like, I'm okay here no matter what is going on. And I see so much oftentimes with my clients, especially when they're, out there trying to do something in the world, I really need to sit down and figure this out. I need to like mentally just take my brain and like understand, how do I figure this out? Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I could only like follow the program perfectly, then I would heal myself. I would be good at business. I would create something of value. And I see how much it takes for us to move past that and actually relax some of that and come from this place that you're talking about. Like, it's easy for us to say, oh, you just follow your intuition and your guidance and like your body. And
But how?
But how do I do it? Because I'm driving myself crazy and my brain is on fire.
Well, I really love that you mentioned the word perfection, because this is my favorite thing to do with people. We are not perfect. We don't even come out of the womb perfect. So like if you put your hands together, you notice that one hand is bigger than the other hand, right? Like this finger is longer than this finger, right? One foot's bigger than the other foot. One arm's longer than the other arm. We are not even, one ear's higher than the other ear. Like we are not even symmetrical beings. None of us are. Like we don't even come together symmetrically. And one of the things I really hope, like one of the things I hope for for our country, and for the world, but really for what people are struggling with here right now with everything that's going on, is I hope that people can look at, like, they can imagine their favorite thing that happens in nature, whether it's a bird or a tree or a mountain or the ocean, like a beach, whatever. And imagine talking to that thing the way we talk to ourselves. So I have this visual meditation where I walk people through, visualize your most favorite naturally occurring thing on the planet. For me, it's aspen trees, because I love aspens because I grew up in Utah and they're my tree. And I imagine asking the leaves to stop clicking so much, or I imagine making a tree move because I don't have the perfect view of the vista, right, of the mountainside. Like if you could just move over so I could have a more perfect experience, that would be really great. And we would never talk to Like, we would never look at the ocean and be like, wow, those waves are really neat, but could you do a better job? Like, we would never do that. But we are the trees, we are the ocean. I would never look at the hummingbird that flew in front of my face the other day and be like, wow, you're not very vibrant. You should get your shit together. Like, I would never do that. But we talk to ourselves like that all the time. And yet we are that thing, that imperfect, beautiful, amazing hummingbird that's buzzing me in the face. I would never speak to that hummingbird the way I used to talk to myself. And that shit creeps in still, like, no question. Like, that negative way of talking to ourselves. Well, I think it's always something that's going to creep in. And also, my practice has become, I can catch it so much faster, almost immediately now, when I'm like, why are you talking to yourself like that? Like, you're amazing. Look at all, look at all the wonderful things you've done in your life that you never thought you would accomplish when you were 17, right? So I think there's something really critical about that. And I also have a breathing practice where I breathe open mouth to get my breath into my heart. And I hold my hands open so that I can give and receive love, because our hands and our arms are the conduit to our heart. And if we breathe through our mouth and we open our mouth and we hold our hands open, then we create a circular motion that moves that love and that loving energy all around us. And I think the more we do that, the more we just allow ourselves to be open-handed and open-hearted, we are going to start to really feel embodied. And then our intuition will just become louder and louder. And listen, I'm like the queen of turning off my intuition. I'm like, nope, not listening to you. Thanks so much. That was a good idea, but no. And when I do, it just makes things more complicated. And it prolongs the inevitable. Like, I'm like, oh, if I would have just done that 5 months ago, maybe my life would have been different. And also, can't go back in time, unfortunately. So it is where it is, and it is what it is. So being really present to that, I think, is also a really good way to help people learn how to listen. And in this world of just, we can get pulled down into the soup of everything that is going on this planet right now. We really can. And also, I don't actually think that's why we're here. I think we are all here collectively at this moment to envision a different way.
Yeah. I hear a lot of elements in what you're saying that I want to kind of spell out for people, because I think they're so great. And this can be like, here, y'all of people who like bullet points and like synthesized
Structure.
ideas. Yeah. So in elements of intuitive leadership, I'm hearing not only in terms of like listening to the intuitive messages that you're maybe receiving from your spirit team, from your higher self, whatever, but like very deep attunement and sensitivity and embodiment to your own body, to your ecosystem, to your context. And with that, that opens the door for deep intimacy and relationality, of knowing that, we are the aspen trees, we are the hummingbird, just as we are, we're in this very profound reciprocal relationship with our field of influence. We are part of this ecosystem as a community of care, and how we are holding or not holding ourselves and each other in that. So when I hear you talk about this intuitive leadership, and again, I keep coming back to like, okay, how can we get this into politics? There's so much of the realm of separation of people who may be in these positions of creating policy or writing things into law, that are not in this very embodied, very relational, very intimate attunement with the impact and with the reciprocity and right aliveness and respect that you're talking about here, intuitive leadership. So this is really like a new vision of how to, again, lead in our families, in our communities, in our own lives, with our personal and professional relationships. And I know a lot of people here who tune into this podcast. Maybe you consider yourself leaders already. Maybe you're not really sure about putting on that mantle, but I know that people who are here are generally here because you know that you're part of this global shift in consciousness, whether it's that you're a healer or a practitioner, or you're here to anchor in the collective field. However you're here, that is an element of leadership. And whether or not you already see that in yourself, I'm inviting you, please consider this your invitation to be in that inquiry of, how can I be curious? How can I drop into that embodiment and attunement and allow myself to lead through my behaviors, my thoughts, my words, my actions in a way that is anchoring in these frequencies that we're talking about, and allowing that to ripple out into becoming the norm for how people are relating to this aspect of influence. It's this really like, what is the type of relationship that we have with our field of influence? Are we seeing that as a top down, one directional flow of energy and information? Nothing in nature exists that way. We are continually in a cyclical and reciprocal relationship with our field of influence, where we are informed by the ecosystems that we live in and that hold us, and we inform the ecosystems that we live in. And that's just nature's law, babe. Like, anyone who pretends otherwise is completely delusional.
Well, and I think when it comes particularly to politics, there's so many of us who we want to see something different. We don't want to see the same old people doing the same old thing, because we know we are at that place where radical shifts have got to take place. And this is where I want to really encourage people to get to know people like me who are running for office. We've got to get to know our candidates. We have to get to know who they are as people. And we have to have faith and trust that if we upend this process, everything's still going to be okay. And that is a lot of what I am experiencing as I've been on the campaign trail, and as I'm getting ready to formally announce my campaign. As I've been talking to people, they are very afraid of messing with the status quo. And that's why I think the graceful revolution is so important, because the status quo is breaking down. And we have a really incredible opportunity. I'm not delusional. Like, I understand how Congress works. I understand the entire framework of policymaking at a federal level. And I also understand that if we truly want to change the way our communities are being affected from the top all the way down, then we have to be electing people in office who are here to flip that table and make a change. And we have to trust that when we give them our vote, that we are also connecting with people. And I think this is really the thing that turns people off about politics, that I absolutely like dove all the way headfirst into. I get to know my elected officials. I talk to my elected officials, especially at a local level. But I think it's really important for people to remember that people who are holding public office, they serve at the pleasure of us, not themselves or a party or any of those things. And also, they still put their pants on one leg at a time. They're just like us. They are just people who are doing a job that we have actually asked them to do by voting. And the more of us that vote, the more people who vote in every single election, the more we are going to shift who is holding those offices and who's willing to run for those offices. Part of my purpose in all of this is to create opportunities to raise up leaders throughout this entire congressional district, which is a huge district. It goes from the border of California all the way up the coast to Lincoln County, and then all of Benton County and all of Lane County. So y'all can look at a map of Oregon so you understand that a little bit better, but it's huge. And we need to be offering support and resources and love and to people who really want to be involved in their communities. And we need to be training up generations of leaders from all over this district and all over the state and all over the country who, when they're ready, are going to jump in and do this thing. And we do that by connecting with people in community. That is how this campaign is being run. One door at a time, one coffee talk at a time, one conversation at a time. And really allowing people to realize that their vote, especially in the upcoming election in 2026, that vote is going to be critical on a million different levels, energetically, spiritually, physically, and emotionally for this country.
Absolutely. I know you spoke a little bit to the towns and the counties that District 4 includes, but I know it includes cities like Corvallis, Eugene, also, right? So larger cities, but also rural areas. And so and this is the case in many congressional districts. Like it's a combination of populations of people who may or may not have these similar values, these similar personal contexts. And so then, I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about intuitive relationship in regards to like being in attunement and healthy relationship and responsibility with a different population of people. Because, and many of us who are tuning into this podcast, like, yeah, we like to hang out with the helpers, healers, but of course we all have people in our lives and our communities who are not like us. So how do we lead ethically and responsibly and in a way that creates space for plurality, creates space for the beauty of diversity in all of the ways that manifests? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really great question. This district also includes 5 of the 9 tribes in Oregon.
Yeah.
So there's also several federally recognized tribes within this district as well. And so it is a very diverse district. And the thing I love about it is its rurality. Like, I grew up in a small town in Utah that was also a tourist town. So we'd get the skiers. I grew up in Park City, so we get the skiers that come in and the skiers that leave, and that's what the coast is. The coast is very much a place where people come to travel, and so it's very diverse economically, and it's one of the things that I think is really important is thinking about rural economic development. How are people not just surviving but thriving? Like, how are we having conversations about what the current administration is doing that's going to completely remove from people the capacity to have resources? The Small Business Administration has been decimated. I was in a meeting yesterday, and they were talking about all the domestic violence funding that has been cut for services for people who are victims of domestic violence. Our education system is about to be really, really hit very hard. And in a place like this where and agriculture, like the USDA being cut, like, there are so many that it does not matter your background. It does not matter your economic status. It does not matter what party, political party you're a part of. Every single one of us is going to be impacted by what's happening from the current administration. And that means we have to start coming together to talk about what we need in those areas so that people who are holding office at the congressional level can advocate for what their district is experiencing. And it is the diversity of this district that I think is so beautiful. And I think there is something really, really incredible about getting to know people, particularly in the rural areas of this district, and hearing what it is that they need. Because we also, part of intuitive leadership and the Graceful Revolution is not assuming what people need. And I think that's a lot of times what we get from organizations and people in power is we make a lot of assumptions about what people need. And especially when we clump groups of people together, like, we think, well, I know best because that's what I would need. And that's not how I think that's why this is all kind of crumbling around us, is because we have an opportunity right now to really find out what it is that people need, because what people need down in Coos Bay is not what people need in Corvallis, Oregon. And hell, Philomath is like 10 minutes from my house. What people need in Philomath is not what people need in Eugene. And so I think that's also the complexity of having such gigantic congressional districts, is it also means that whoever is leading is pulled in all of those directions, which means we have to have connections with the people in those districts who can tell us this is what's happening for me down, on the Gold Coast, and this is what's happening for me in Newport, Oregon. And if we start engaging with people and telling them, please talk to me, please tell me what's happening in your life, that is a totally different way of leading than saying, I'm going to tell you what's happening in your life and here's what I'm going to do to fix it.
Yeah.
Start with where people are at, not where we want them to be.
Yeah, I think that's, we've seen a huge amount of rural people and kind of the working man populace move towards Trumpism and kind of be pulled in, by the community of it, right? The identity of it. And then now with everything that's happening, they're going to see the effects. I mean, we all know our grocery prices have gone up tremendously. Our rural hospitals are shutting down. Our nursing homes are sending people home. They don't have care. They don't have a space to care for these people. And these are people who in these rural communities and small towns are being affected. So it feels like this is the only way to really be that welcoming presence and the open arms of like, hey, we get it. Like, we get it. We get what you actually wanted, but, are you getting that? And how do we hold that, open arms to be able to say, like, let's actually solve these problems together? And
Listen, I have teenagers, so I know how much food costs right now. Let me just say, I mean, I have a 14-year-old son. That kid can eat. Like I'm like, what is happening right now? You just ate a whole Costco pizza. I don't understand what's going on. And that, I mean, actually understanding what it's like to go grocery shopping right now, I think is actually a good leadership trait to have with someone in Congress, because I actually know what's going on at the grocery line, right?
There are a lot of
I also really
politicians
wanna
who
see-
haven't gone to the grocery store in who
No,
knows
they
how
haven't.
long, ever, in 20 years, 30 years, 50, 70 years.
Who knows? Like, but I actually do want to address something about, I think this is actually what Republicans do really well. They are not afraid of saying exactly what they think. And I have used this analogy before a couple times as I've started to run for Congress. Democrats are bringing a strongly worded letter to a gunfight. They're playing checkers. And I want to play chess. Like, we have got to start thinking differently about party politics. We have to start recognizing that what President Trump is offering to people is a radical departure from the status quo. And people are attracted to that. And I am the radical departure from the status quo on the other side, right? And I actually think that's going to resonate with a lot of rural people. I was joking the other day with someone when I was talking about my campaign, how much Republican women love me. that my experience growing up in Utah, I can speak that language, and I can speak to people no matter what political party they're from. And that's about humanizing our politics. Like, this is such an opportunity to completely transition the way that we are thinking about the political world, even here in Oregon, where we very much like to do things the same, especially when it comes to democratic politics. And I truly believe that if we are going to fight this movement towards the right, then we have to think about electing people that are willing to go in there and do that. And that's what I am offering. What I am offering is a different voice in democratic politics that gives people an entirely different option and I can still lead, and I can still create policy, and I can still understand the system. And I think that's what makes me such a unique person is I have this very radical idea of actually building community, especially from people who don't necessarily agree on everything. And also, I know how this works.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing. I think that makes me like extra awesome.
Well, I love that
Definitely.
you're willing to even use this word radical, right? Because I think that we've been like, oh, the radical left is so this, and so there's a lot of Democrats who've been like, oh, well, we don't want to look radical, so we'll just be really tender and just like we just do very like trepidatious and actually advocating for change that will help all people. And so I think
You know what's radical?
Embrace it a little bit.
Jesus was a radical. Jesus was a radical. I'm not talking about like this,
Absolutely.
the way the media portrays the word radical. I'm talking about the radical idea of connection, of love, of this universal tether we all have to the planet. I mean, like the earth is not actually dying. She's just getting rid of us because she's tired. She's like, well, this was a fun experiment with all y'all, but let's move on, shall we? And creation isn't done. This is going to keep going and going and going, whether we are here or not, but honoring her as the connective tissue with which we all are anchored. That is the honoring of the divine source of love, which is a very radical idea. And there are so many people that inspire me. There are so many people that inspire me in the world, from biblical times, from ancient times, from all the way up till now, who lived in this radical way of connecting with each other. That's what I mean when I say radical. It is a radical, revolutionary idea to think about the fact that we could actually cross party lines to come together to get things done in our communities. I've done it. I've been there. I've done it in state legislators. I've done it as a lobbyist in Congress. Like, I have done those things and I've seen it work. It happens. And I believe it can happen again.
I think the root of the word radical means like the root, like coming down to the root or connected by the root, right? Like that's what the word means. Yeah. So it's really about, and I think there's, this interesting, as long as we're getting into like the words that and what they actually mean, I think the Democratic Party is actually very conservative, meaning they're very interested in keeping things the same, like conserving and carrying on, again, that status quo piece that you mentioned earlier, Melissa. So I think in terms of coming down to the roots of our own Gaian origins, our own like human connection, like what we all have in common, and rooting into community. And rather than keeping things the same that are working for a very small percentage of people is very appealing, and this does make me think. I'm having like my brain map go all over the place. I'll try to keep it cohesive. It makes me think of when I hear people talk about Trump's most successful campaign slogan that he was using, was that she, meaning Kamala Harris, she's for they, them, he's for you. And so it was this, really, and that was his most successful one that appealed to the most people. And I think, when we're talking about the diversity of people within a district, or the diversity of our American community as a larger community, there's this almost like, because many representatives come from inherently like families that can afford to run a campaign, right? Like there's a educational and financial privilege component that plays hugely into who can even run for office, who has the time and the resources to run for office. Those people generally come from more urban areas. They come from old money. They come from, they have multiple degrees, maybe, who knows? And so then there's this orientation toward the communities that they already hang out with, and the slightly more left leaning aspect of the liberal community, rather than like a South Carolina Democrat is not the same as a Bay Area Democrat. Like the values and the orientation are completely different. And so having people who may genuinely align with democratic values about taking care of people and socially progressive policies, but be like, oh, I don't see myself in what the Democratic Party is portraying. So that actually ends up creating this feeling of alienation or exclusion, where maybe I actually do see myself more represented in Republican campaign materials, even if those policies are actually very radically damaging to those people. So then
I'm really glad you brought up money, because I am running a grassroots campaign. I have to raise $2.5 million for the primary. And that's just the reality. And if we could just, I know we need to get money out of politics, but that is not the world we live in. And when I first started as the lobbyist for Planned Parenthood of Utah, one of the biggest things I did was start to talk to people about the fact that if we want to have healthy moms make healthy babies and make sure that people can become parents when and how they want to become parents, if they want to become parents, and if we're making sure that we are operating on a reproductive justice framework where everybody has access to health care that they need, then we have to start raising money to make that happen. That's again where that metaphor is of playing checkers versus chess, right? I am raising money $10 at a time. And I truly believe that there are enough people in the world and enough organizations in the world who can see themselves in my campaign and what I'm doing that will donate that money. And the reality is, if we do really want to make a change in our country, we are going to have to invest in that. And sometimes that's volunteering. Sometimes that's hosting a house party. Sometimes that's just putting a lawn sign in your yard and voting. And that's the only thing that you do. And sometimes it's donating money. So there are many ways for us to be involved in helping change the evolution of our political structure. And I think we just have to admit that sometimes it requires a financial contribution. Because
absolutely.
yeah, I'm a working mom.
Yeah.
I'm a small business owner. I'm not coming into this with the bazillions of dollars. That's not what I'm doing. But
There's
I'm doing really good in my fundraising. So
amazing. We'll put all the links for that in the show notes too. So I also want to highlight, even if you don't live in Oregon's 4th district, you can still donate to Melissa's campaign and to the campaigns of any other people that you feel really inspired by. Like I've donated to campaigns of people in other states where I'm like, I know that if they are winning, that's a good thing for everybody in the country. So
that's right.
yeah. So even if you're like, oh, I don't live there, like, this is still an important thing that you can contribute to.
Yeah, because my leadership at the federal level ripples out to every part of the nation. It ripples out everywhere, and paying attention to your school boards, especially pay attention to your school board races, because those are going to be the most important races. I truly believe the most important races in the next 4 years because of everything that's happening with the Department of Education. Pay attention to your city council races. Pay attention to what's happening in your local politics. And remember, borders are just a construct. They're not real. Like, those things are just arbitrarily made by people. And so, yeah, like what I'm going to be doing as a congresswoman is going to ripple out all over.
Yeah. I want to take a moment and say something that I wish I had said at the very beginning of the episode, because I know that in our community, meaning the spiritual, mystic, nature-based healers, helpers, psychics, mediums, there are a lot of people who say, "Oh, I don't do politics," or I'm apolitical. And it drives me fucking bonkers. And I say that now, having dove into being much more politically informed than I ever have been in my entire life. And I think a lot of people are in that boat, given that things are in the state that they're in. I'm paying a lot more attention than I did when things were kind of clicking along pretty well. And I think it is it drives me nuts, in particularly in this population of, I do not believe that you can say that you are a healer or that you are a spiritual practitioner or that you are here to serve the collective well-being and also say you are apolitical. I do not believe those things can coexist, because the reality of the system and the country that we live in is that we have a political system that makes decisions and makes policies and makes laws that do impact every aspect of our lives for every single person. From our, Melissa, like you were mentioning, the Department of Education and Agriculture, and our food, our schools for our kids, our health care, Social Security, everything, everything. And we live within this ecosystem of how government and how policy impacts all of these things. And it is, frankly, very ignorant and very oblivious and very privileged to say, oh, I'm a spiritual practitioner. I'm not political. I don't pay attention to that. And it's another way of spiritual escapism and bypassing. And it is far beyond time. If you are one of these people, like, please, please, please drop it. Like, cut that out right now. And in the most loving way, come be informed, and be informed in a way that isn't going to like throw you out. I have like 2 people that I follow and pay attention to every single day, and not more than 2. It like is just the right amount of like, I'm informed, but not overwhelmed. So find what works for you, but keep your finger on the pulse and be engaged in some kind of meaningful way. Like Melissa was mentioning, there are many, many meaningful ways to be participating in politics, but we do not have the luxury. If we ever had the luxury, we don't have it anymore, of being apolitical. And
I'm glad you brought that up, because I just want to make sure I say that I get it. I understand. Like, this is overwhelming. We're drinking from a fire hose. It can be a lot. And that's why I always encourage people to just pay attention to 1 or 2 people, right? Like you just said. And also, there is so much power. People win by 10 votes in local races. So pay attention to who those people are. Ask them questions. Ask them why they're running. And I am open to talking to anybody. So if you have felt like you don't want to be political, or you don't think you should have to be, or any of those things, I'm happy to talk to anybody about that, because I think you're absolutely right, Michelle. It is time. Like, if there was ever a moment where we decided to finally register to vote, it is this year. It is truthfully this year, because we are absolutely at that tipping point.
Yeah. You're a lot nicer about it than I am.
Yeah, because I think that sometimes we go, oh, I'm so spiritual, I'm so empathic, I'm so intuitive, so I just can't expose myself to all this negativity. And it's like, okay, so you're exposing yourself to information, awareness, understanding of what is harming human beings, what is harming the earth, what is harming the water, what is harming the children, what is harming whole collectives of humans. And I understand that we can get overwhelmed by what's going on, and also get your shit together, do your practices, get your feet on the earth, get your community. Like, I understand that we can be really, in the of our sensitivities. But
and humanize politicians. We're just people. We're literally humans. Like, we gotta like, it's way easier to get into that when you realize that people who are elected to public office are just people.
Yeah.
They still have coffee or tea in the morning for breakfast. Like, just people.
Well, and I think, like, if your spiritual teacher, advisor, leader, if their spirituality is so fragile that they can't make a stand on what's going on in the world, that's like, because it's not just humans just barely, like, oh, I'm trying to deal with the world, but it's actual spiritual leaders, people who are putting themselves into positions of power and influence, that are saying, well, we can't even pay attention, because that's not spiritual. And I think that's not spiritual.
I think it's the opposite. I think it's the opposite, Katherine.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. It's that, again, that relational intimacy that we were talking about at the beginning of like this embodied participation of if you are a spiritual practitioner, leader, teacher, whatever, then part of our ethical responsibility as leaders, teachers, practitioners, facilitators is attunement and relation. And of course it is painful. Kat, like you were mentioning, tuning into the pain of people in the world. There is so much shit going on that is awful in the world. And absolutely. But being a healer inherently means coming into intimate contact with pain. That's part of the job description. If you are a healer, you will interact with sick people. You will interact with people who are going through horrible things. And being attuned to, if you're here and you're saying, I'm here to be part of the collective shift, guess what, babe? Like, part of that is politics, because this is part of the collective shift of the practical aspects. That's this other thing, is like there's the etheric aspects of, yes, we can offer prayers, we can make offerings, we can be in collaboration and intuitive leadership, like we were talking about, of communication with the spirit guides. But the practical application of that is writing things into law, creating close relationships with constituents and communities, and hearing, what do you need and how can we support each other in that? Like, this is all the very grounded, embodied, the radical, in the roots aspect of being in a healthy, responsible spiritual practice, is actually effectively taking care of each other. That is part of our responsibility as healers. I firmly believe that.
yeah. I mean, but we're,
Totally.
We're radical.
In all the
I
good
wouldn't
ways.
want to not be radical on this path, because we are talking about, we're like, okay, we want global transformation. We want an awakening and a transformation of consciousness. We want humanity to be congruent with love and care and community and respect and collaboration and the earth. And how are we going to get there? In every way possible. We have to be willing to look at every possible way that we can influence that. So thank you so much, Melissa, for your service in this way. I know that it is honestly sometimes so much easier for us to sit and go to ceremony and meditate and be like, we're, being of service. And that is beautiful service, but to be on the ground, in the trenches, in the willingness of having just so much of yourself with other people, having so many conversations, having your life interrupted in this way, just to even consider doing something like this. Just thank you so much. And I just want to ask for all of the highest guides and teachers to guide you and illuminate your heart and your mind and your path, and for your ancestors to uplift you and to walk with you every single day of this journey, that you be guided and protected and held in such care and love and ease on this path. Just thank you so much for the service that you're doing for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my honor.
Melissa, I would love, and Kat, thank you so much for that beautiful prayer. Melissa, in the interest of supporting you, we're going to include, of course, all of your links, every way that people can be in contact with you, that they can contribute to your campaign. That'll all be in the show notes. But do you have any requests right now that we can hear you? All of us who are tuning in, who have listened through to this long episode, how can we support you in your campaign and your work?
Well, you can definitely learn more about my programs and intuitive leadership, and also my divination sessions at drmelissabird.com. And then you can and you can also find me at birdgirl1001 on Instagram and Facebook. And then you can follow this congressional journey at melissabirdforcongress.com. The website launches during my rally on August 23rd. And then you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, as well as TikTok and Blue Sky. So I have all the congressional things happening. And I'm really excited to be on this journey, and I hope you'll join me for it, in whatever way you can and you feel compelled to do so, because it's going to be an amazing ride.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Yes, Melissa also does wonderful intuitive and tarot readings. So if you are, you're about Congress is cool, but also I want a tarot reading, then please go see her for that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Please come see me for that.
Yeah.
I love them. They're my favorite thing.
Yes. Yeah. She's very, very intuitive, very attuned. So I can plug your work for that as having
Thanks.
experienced it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Well,
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation. I'm so excited by what you're doing, and excited about the intersection of spirituality and politics in a very practical way. It's very exciting. And I'm hoping that this is also really resonant and appealing to people in our audience. And if you are inspired to, of course, apply these principles and these awarenesses in how you are stepping into your intuitive leadership in your life. This is not only what Melissa's doing, but this is also what all of us are doing, is how we can really anchor into this to translate these spiritual principles of the laws of nature, the universal law, into practical application in our lives. Like, this is that radical, graceful revolution that we're all here to do. And of course, please support Melissa on her political journey as well. Thank you so much for being here. This was wonderful.